It's good.
Morning, Susanna.
It's very good to see you.
What about me?
Piers Morgan is here.
Morning, Piers.
And feeling hurt already. Right, we've got two big issues to deal with here, and I'm going to start actually on Brexit, because for many people that obviously, you know, notwithstanding all the stuff that's been in the news, Brexit is the big deal. And I want to ask you, first off, as someone who campaigned for Remain and as someone who voted for Remain, how can you persuade Brexiteers that you are now enthusiastically for Brexit, particularly those members of the ERG, the 90 members of your own MPs in your own party, who continually blocked Theresa May's deal? How do you win them over?
Well, I'm like millions of people who campaigned for Remain, voted to Remain, who just want to get on with this. We want to deliver Brexit, and what I would say to those people is, look at my record. I voted 3 times to leave the European Union. In the Cabinet, I've been the one arguing the whole time that we should get a better deal than the backstop, get something that we can get through Parliament, and if Parliament had done what I wanted, we'd have left the EU by now.
What people are concerned about, I think, in the Conservative Party, and ultimately it's their membership that will decide your fate here, they're concerned about what they suspect is a flip-flopping, blowing-in-the-wind position on Brexit that you've done for political expediency. And they base it on this. You voted Remain, and then after we voted to leave as a country, you call for the UK to stay in the single market, which most people who voted leave think is completely untenable. Then, a year later, you call for a possible second referendum or a fresh general election for a new Conservative manifesto. Then the next day you said, actually, I don't think there needs to be another referendum, and so on. So what people have seen is a pattern, really, before, during and after Brexit, the actual referendum itself, where you appear to be trying to blow in the wind of where you think the train is now heading.
Piers, that's wrong. The article you're talking about, with respect to the single market, I think I wrote 6 or 7 days after the referendum result. And, you know, sure, I was in a state of shock, as lots of people were. We didn't expect that result. But since then, I have been consistent in saying that we need to have a democratic endorsement of the type of Brexit we want, which we've had now with a general election. Over 80% of voters voted for the 2 parties that wanted to leave the single market and leave the customs union. Boris himself wrote an article saying why we should remain in the EU, and an article saying why we should leave the EU. Boris actually voted against Theresa May's deal, and he voted for Theresa May's deal. So I've been much more consistent than Boris on this, and I would just make this point. You talk about Conservative Party members. It is very disrespectful to say that you're not going to appear in any head-to-head debates in the 2 weeks when they can see you before they've actually voted. Because 2 weeks from now, postal ballots are going to be landing on people's doorsteps. People are going to be making their decisions. And if you're saying the only debates I'll do are after people have voted, that is not showing respect.
Well,
and what you need as a Prime Minister is you need to go into number 10. Now, I make this point, Susanna. You need to go into number 10 with a mandate. People need to know what you're going to do, and you need to answer those questions.
We're hearing a new style. All right, we're hearing a new style Jeremy Hunt, aren't we? We're hearing a guy who's coming out...
You're just hearing a Jeremy Hunt that's always been there, Piers.
Well, it's been lurking.
Maybe I've just been a little bit polite to you before.
You've kept him bottled up, I have to say, with respect.
You've always been the kind of quiet guy, you know, the sort of well-mannered bloke. Now out you come, all guns blazing. The headlines are, Johnson's a coward. You're doubling down on this cowardly line today. This is a new Jeremy Hunt, isn't it? Have you got your gander up, Mr. Hunt? Do you feel like, you know, like the horses at Ascot when the favourite was there, that you're the one coming up on the rails?
I promised Boris Johnson the fight of his life, and he's going to have that, and he's going to lose as well, because if he is not prepared to answer questions on the basic things that he's going to do. Like this morning, for example, we've had Tobias Ellwood, a Conservative government minister, who said that he thinks there are a dozen people who would bring down Boris Johnson if he tried to go into a no-deal Brexit. Now, what's he going to do? Is he going to have an election or not in that situation? And as a pretty basic question which you need to be able to answer.
We
and I
can
think
see,
Conservative Party members want to know the answer to those questions.
We can see that you're taking full advantage of Boris Johnson's absence from the airwaves. But the thing is, you also have to answer questions, don't you?
Well, all he's got to do is to come onto the airwaves and answer these questions, and then I won't be doing it.
Of course, but we need to, we need to hear your... To be fair,
he's got a point, isn't he? He has got a point.
I know,
sure. I'd be saying the same thing.
But it's also a fantastic tactic, isn't it? Because actually you need to also answer questions, and we have you right here. The EU have said that the withdrawal deal is not open for renegotiation, and you haven't got very much time left. So what on earth are you going to do, and how are you going to do it in a way that Theresa May couldn't do it? What is your magic potion that you're going to sprinkle on the withdrawal deal that's suddenly going to make it passable? And how are you going to do it in time? And would you leave on October the 31st if you can't do it with no deal and all the consequences that that would entail?
OK, well, let me answer those questions very directly, Susanna. First of all, there is no magic potion. This is going to be very difficult. And when I go into number 10, I'm going to be completely honest with people. This is not going to be easy, but it is doable. And it's doable because the EU want to try and resolve this without a deal. They want to try and resolve this with a deal. Would I leave on October the 31st? If we get to October the 31st and Parliament has not taken no deal off the table, and there's no prospect of a deal that we can get through Parliament, then with a heavy heart, yes, I would leave, because we have to honour the democratic mandate of the British people. So I give a straight answer to a straight question, but it wouldn't be my first choice. And the choice that Conservative Party members have to make is, who is the Prime Minister that they trust to go to Brussels and actually come back with a deal that can get through Parliament? Because if you send a negotiator, someone they're prepared to engage with, someone who won't blink when the going gets tough, you can get a deal. But if you choose the wrong person, there'll be no trust, no negotiation, no deal, and maybe even no Brexit if we get tripped into a general election.
OK, let me ask you about something else. Your position on Boris Johnson, you don't want to get personal with him, although calling him a gutless coward, some would strike as fairly personal, but I get your wider point.
Well, on the question of debates, he is being a coward on the question of debates,
OK,
yes.
no, you've made that point very clearly. On his personal life, do you think Nicola Sturgeon yesterday questioned on Twitter whether actually everything is private in a politician's life, and that Boris seems to just broad brushstrokes say everything's private, even when the police turn up at his flat because of a huge domestic row, it's heard by neighbours, even down to the number of children that he has. We're not even allowed to know from Boris Johnson whether he has 4, 5 or 6 children. It all seems a bit weird for a guy who wants to be Prime Minister. What is your view about what the public is entitled to know about people like Boris, like you, who want to lead the country?
I just think that what happens in people's personal lives is completely irrelevant given the constitutional crisis that we face at the moment as a country. And what people want to know is, what are your answers on Brexit? As Susanna said right now, what are you actually going to do when faced with these difficult choices? And we need a Prime Minister who goes to number 10, having been honest about the choices that they'll make, so that people know what's coming and they have the authority to do what they've promised. And, you know, we've all got personal lives. I'm sure we've all got things, as I've said before, that, you know, we wouldn't want our mum and dad to find out about that we did 25 years ago. But this is just so irrelevant compared to the gravity of the situation that we face as a country.
Do you have any skeletons you'd like to get off your chest while you're...
Things 25 years ago you don't want your mum and dad to know about?
What don't your mum and dad know that they should perhaps know, Mr Hunt?
Well, my dad's no longer with us, but my mum might be watching, so I can't answer that question, Piers.
Well, let me put it another way. Theresa May said the naughtiest thing she'd ever done was run through a wheat field, which was a moment I kind of slightly died, I have to be honest with you. What is the naughtiest thing you've ever done?
Well, I did say that when I was backpacking through India, I once had a bang lassie, which is a kind of cannabis lassie.
Oh, yes.
That's the naughtiest one I'm prepared to confess to on this programme, because it's a family show, Susanna.
Let's move on from your bang lassie, Mr Hunt, to... let me talk about something more serious. Your view on abortion has got a lot of attention, because you have a very draconian view, as many would see it, on abortion. You want to reduce the limit on legal abortion from 24 weeks to 12. Many women feel like, well, hang on, this guy, what does he want to do to women and their choices and their bodies. You said that if you were Prime Minister, you wouldn't force this issue, but it remains your belief. Why do you have such a tough belief on abortion?
Well, look, my views are a matter of public record. That's how I voted. And I've been very honest with people that those are my views, but I've also been very clear that as Prime Minister, I will not seek to change the law on that issue. And so, you know, that is, as far as that issue is concerned, that is it, because, you know, I won't use my position as Prime Minister. It is a free vote matter for the House of Commons. I see absolutely no prospect of the House of Commons changing its view on that matter.
Why is it a view you hold? Just, I think it's important for people to know.
Well, you know, my view is there. I'm completely open about it, but it's not something I would seek to change as Prime Minister. But look what I did as Health Secretary, responsible for the NHS, which, you know, carried on with the policy that Parliament has sanctioned. I never sought to change that. In fact, I authorised payment for women coming from Northern Ireland who needed to come to England to get abortions. So I will uphold the will of Parliament on that.
Right, but out of interest, Mr. Hunt, just out of interest, why is it your view that the law should be reduced, halved, from 24 weeks to 12?
It would be fine to get into that discussion, Piers, if it was something I wanted to change as Prime Minister, but I don't. And so it's a personal view. It's a free vote matter in the House of Commons, and the House of Commons isn't going to change its mind.
Isn't it a bit strange that the guy who wants to be Prime Minister has this view, but simply won't explain why he has it?
Well, he's on your show. He's answering questions about it. He's being very honest about what his view is, but he's also saying that because he's not going to be changing the law as Prime Minister, nothing's going to change. It's not actually relevant to this particular debate as to who should be our next Prime Minister.
Well, yeah, but when you say you're on the show...
It'd be better to at least have someone on the show who can talk about these things than someone who's not on the show.
Well, I get that, but you say you're on the show and you're answering questions and you're being honest. I think people are entitled, notwithstanding your wider view that, you know, you don't want to change the law. Yes, it's a fairly straightforward question. You want to reduce abortion in half, the time limit. Why? Why would you not explain why?
Well, because it's nothing to do with what I want to do as Prime Minister of this country. I'm not going to seek to change the law, and indeed when I was Health Secretary for longer than anyone else, I didn't seek to change the law, and so that's why my view is there. I don't seek to hide from it, but it's not relevant to what I want to do as Prime Minister.
OK. Jeremy Hunt, we need to let you go because we understand you're on an extensive interview round this morning.
Can I ask one last thing? I'm very curious. Your wife calls
Piers.
Your wife calls you Big Rice. Why?
This was the little family secret that slipped out because some journalist from the Mail on Sunday coaxed it out of us. And the truth is she calls me a Chinese translation of that. And I've absolutely no idea why she calls me that. It was her little nickname, and it's one of those things that, to be honest, I sincerely wish the whole world didn't know about, but
well, I can solve the mystery for you, Mr. Hunt. I can tell you why your wife calls you Big Rice.
Go on, Piers.
It's because...
Go on then, Piers.
It's because your wife's grandmother found it very hard to say Jeremy. This is your wife telling the story. So she would just call him the Big Me. Me means rice, so I call him Big Rice.
Ah, OK. OK.
Well, that's what your wife said.
You've got it in one.
Is that true?
Well, I think that is probably the reason, yes.
Well, it's great to speak to you, Big Rice. And, no, but on a serious point, we do appreciate you coming on. Please keep coming back on. Our viewers are entitled to listen to the people who want to run the country, and Theresa May bottled it for 2 years. Boris keeps bottling it. You've had the bottle to come on, and we appreciate it, and we wish you luck in your campaign.
Well, have some lovely rice for your breakfast, Piers and Susanna.
We will. Thank you very much indeed, Big Rice.
That would be a first.